Friends, Dave Paulides, Can-Am Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel. This is Hawk. This is the executive producer and chief administrator for the Missing Project. She said, "Dad, you got to keep working hard, making everybody aware of these missing people." And I'm trying, Hawk. I'm trying, girl. She's a good girl. She's a really good girl. And she'll hang out with us. She's had a long day. And she's getting a little groggy. So this is a missing person segment. And we're going to get right into it. We're not going to delay. This is number 3 in the missing people at Pfeiffer Big Sur State Park, south of Monterey, California. One thing I haven't done is kind of giving you the overview of the park. This is what it says on the state site. The turnoff for popular Pfeiffer Beach is located on Highway 1, approximately 1 mile south of the Big Sur State Park entrance. Heading south from the state park entrance, it is a second right turn. Pfeiffer Beach is not a California state park and charges a separate entrance fee. On the western slope of the Santa Lucia Mountains, the peaks of Pfeiffer Big Sur State Park tower high above the Big Sur River Gorge, where the Big Sur River enters this popular park. Walk along the banks of the river and among the redwoods, conifers, oaks, sycamores, cottonwoods, maples, alders, and willows. A large campground accommodates hikers, bikers, car campers, and RVers. Many campsites are located along the Big Sur River. Wildlife includes bobcats, blacktail, deer, gray squirrels, raccoons, skunks, and birds such as dippers and belted kingfishers. Hikers can enjoy many scenic trails, including a self-guided nature trail. Big Sur Lodge is located in the park. It has 61 guest rooms, a conference center, cafe, and a grocery store. Well, they didn't tell you the whole truth here, which is interesting. They didn't say that there were mountain lions around here. Well, why would the state park do that? Weather. The weather can be changeable. Layered clothing is advised. In the winter, overnight temps can range in the 30s to the 50s. Winter daytime temps can be as low as 50s to mid-70s. In summer, overnight temps can range in the 50s to 70s, with daytime temps typically in the 70s and 80s. Summer mornings bring fog, which usually burns off by midday. I don't think that's being honest either. In the wintertime, it can get down into the 30s and 20s. And I have known it to snow in the park. And in fact, in this story I'm going to tell you, it did snow in the mountains just above the park. Now this is why I'm going to read you this, because all of these cases center around what I'm going to tell you. This is one of the best and well-known trails in the area, punctuated by majestic redwood groves in the pockets of the mountains. This path, Pine Ridge Path, past several camping areas and streams. The area is rocky and steep with hugging the cliffside. Trail is prone to washouts, but the high volume of traffic generally ensures that workaround paths are quickly cut. This is a very busy trail. It is not uncommon to pass more than 50 hikers. The trailhead starts at Big Sur Station off Highway 1. The lot is small and fills up fast. A lot of folks park for free along the highway, but this isn't the safest option. Parking at the trailhead is $5 per day. Leave cash in an envelope or pay at the station, credit cards accepted. This trail is much hotter than it looks. The first reliable water point is Terrace Creek, 5.5 miles in. Don't be deceived by how well worn the trail is. It can be mighty lonely out there. Another point. Personally, if you're going to park on the highway and you're not going to park in the state park, you're not going to have the state park police patrolling that area. And there's a lot of break-ins along Highway 1 with people that are hikers. Don't leave anything in view in the car. Don't entice them in any way. If you're going to leave anything of value, which I hope you don't, but put it in the trunk so nobody can see it. The trail immediately climbs through the first of many redwood groves overlooking the Big Sur campground. This first section is actually in the Piper Big Sur State Park. Dogs are not generally allowed on trails, but the Pine Ridge Trail is an exception as long as they are leashed. As you depart the woods, the trail begins to climb in earnest. You'll gain about 1,000 feet between miles 1 and 3. Some sites say that the trail levels out at this point, but it really doesn't. These aren't any significant level stretches in the entire route. It takes about 2 miles to escape the traffic and RV camp's noise. At the 4.5 mile mark, you'll pass the turnoff of the Ventana Camp. The small connector drops you into the Big Sur River and is a good stopping point if you're traveling with kids. Just keep in mind that you'll have to climb back out before you continue. At the 5.5 mile mark, the trail crosses Terrace Creek. This is a reliable water source and is shaded by redwoods. It's a great place to stop and rest since it's right on the trail. Warning: make sure you bring a water filtration system. Do not trust the water at these locations. Once you cross Terrace Creek, the trail has more shade and crosses several intermittent streams. At the 7 mile mark, you'll pass Barlow Flats campsite, which sits right on the Big Sur. You can see the camp from the trail. This is a good option for camping, especially on weekends when the Sykes campsite tends to be overcrowded. The highest point in the trail is about 1,700 feet, which you'll hit at about 8.5 miles before dropping in earnest to the last 1.5 miles to the Sykes campground. The trail crosses the Big Sur and campsites are in both directions along the river from the crossing point. The Sykes hot springs are about 100 yards downriver on the left side adjacent to the river. There are 2 main pools that can only accommodate 3 to 5 at a time. Since this is such a popular hike, the pools are usually packed. Hot spring etiquette is all over the place, so don't be surprised to see nudity and unsavory behavior. Be warned that this is not to be considered this kid-friendly environment. I've seen it all out there. People smoking weed, doing hard drugs, getting sauced. I mean, it is unruly at times. So that is a good warning. If you're going to bring kids, I'd stay away from the hot springs. So the story. Roy Silverstein. He was 20 years old. He went missing April 29th, 1967 from Big Sur State Park in California. He was a student at UC Davis. I'm going to tell you something about Davis because I know about it not that far back, but pretty far back. Davis is probably one of the more conservative schools back in the late 80s, 90s of all the UC schools. So I went to Berkeley, most radical, and Davis was just the opposite. I had a friend that was going to Davis, and I used to go there and visit. And actually, I hated the radicalism of Berkeley, but Davis was probably one of the calmest, most boring schools around. It was for hardcore students. It was tough to get into. Probably Berkeley, UCLA, and Davis were 1, 2, and 3 on the toughest to get into at the time. He lived in Menlo Park, California. Parents were Mr. and Mrs. Robert Silverstein. Now, Roy was a brilliant young man. How do I know this? Because I not only search forward in archives, I search backward in archives, which nobody ever does. But he was given an award by Stanford Research, SRI, for an essay he wrote on science for the Stanford Research Institute. SRI is probably one of the most esteemed science groups in the nation. To win any award from them was huge. Well, Roy had a break, 2-week break from Davis. And he knew it was coming up, so he planned this trip for a long time. And they were in between quarters. They had quarters back then. And so he made sure that he had everything that he needed. And he told his dad that he didn't want to miss his mail because he was going to be going down there. He was going to be coming home for that quarter break. So he asked his dad to forward all of his mail to the Big Sur post office. Seems reasonable. And there were multiple times that they had talks about what he was bringing in his backpack. Food, flashlight, sleeping bag, everything you'd need. He told his parents that he was going to drive from Davis and start the hike on April 11th and be out by April 29th. That's a long hike. That's a long time in the backwoods. I don't care who you are. As being as young as he was, first of all, it's a lot of food you got to carry. And a lot of things can happen in that time, as apparently they did. So when you come into this area, you got to check in at the Big Sur Ranger Station, and you got to fill out a permit. It's not really a permit, but they call it a permit to go into the wilderness area. It's called a wilderness permit. Now, there's no approval process. You just say when you're going in, when you're coming out, and where you're going to visit. Now, this is the biggest fallacy in backpacking, I'm going to tell you, so pay close attention. These backcountry permits are never looked at or reviewed until the end of the season, when they want to see how many people went to certain areas in that region, how much of an impact people had. They are not used to determine if somebody's missing. They don't keep them on their desk and look, okay, you know, you're supposed to be out April 1st, it's April 3rd, this person's not out, we're going to go look for them. They never look. Please understand this. Do not rely on these. I've known, because I've read dozens of backcountry permits that were just sitting on people's desk in the Forest Service, or the rangers would say, oh, we don't even monitor them. It's just used to see the impact on certain areas. Remember that. But remember, he also told his parents when he'd be out. He told the ranger that he was heading to the Sykes camp, the hot springs. The ranger stated Roy had maps, and he seemed adequately supplied. So he enters the backcountry alone. Again, I've said this 1,000 times. If you're a young person, or if you're an old person, if you're going into the backcountry alone, you carry a personal locator beacon. About $300. You find them online at Amazon. Find them on Amazon, then go to the store, buy it there. Well, as a parents, I'm sure that they were just worried sick about their young man going alone into a wilderness area. Well, he was supposed to be out April 29th. Late that day, Robert, his dad, still hadn't heard from him. So he calls the Big Sur post office to see if his son had picked up his mail. Post office said no, he had not. So he says, okay, maybe he's running a little late. I'll wait one more morning. The next morning, calls again. Son hadn't been in. Father calls the Monterey County Sheriff's Office. Reports his son as a missing person. Sheriff completes the profile report on his son. Experienced backpacker. Had not gone out into this area alone ever. Did not have a firearm. Had matches. Had a camp stove. Had all those things that you would need to survive in the backcountry. Had a lot of food. The sheriff then calls the ranger station and says, did this young man fill out a backcountry permit? Well, yes, he did. We have this, and he was supposed to be out 2 days ago. Oh, okay, thank you. Where did he say he was going? Say he was going to Sykes. Okay. Now they're set up about where to go. And he was going via the Pine Ridge Trail. Now, let's stop. Hold your taters right there. Just stop everything. If this is the first video you've watched in a while, stop. Go back 2 videos. Because that's when we started this segment, this cluster of missing people in Piper, Big Sur State Park. This is person number 3. And each time that Pine Ridge Trail has come up. So they know he's probably on that Pine Ridge Trail, or he's at Sykes. So that day, the sheriff's office starts looking for resources. They called different military groups asking if they could use their helicopter. And even today, if you can believe it or not, police departments use a teletype. And each police department in the nation has a teletype. Be on the lookout for, request assistance, we have a warrant for. These go out all the time, all the time. And usually it's a records department in those police departments that reads these teletypes as they come in, put them in the box for the different units. This one would have been for a search and rescue. They're looking for resources. Well, the next day, after they take the report on April 30th, May 1st, the U.S. Army at Fort Ord, yes, Fort Ord was open back then, dispatched a helicopter into Big Sur to start looking. The helicopter flies out, lands on the lawn. They get a briefing from deputies, and they get the helicopter to drop a group of deputies at Sykes because that was his destination, Roy's destination. They didn't know how far he got. And then they were going to use a series of deputies at the Big Sur campground and go up towards Sykes, interviewing campers, hikers as they're coming out to make sure they don't miss anybody. Have you seen this person? What does that person look like? That's a very good question, isn't it? Now, this is a picture of Roy when he was in high school. Like I said, very smart, very studious, wore glasses regularly. So on May 1st, deputies leave Big Sur campground and deputies are flown up to Sykes. The guys landing at Sykes, it's a very popular area now. They go around to each campground, they go around to each of the hot pools, and they're showing Roy's photo to everybody, seeing if they've seen him. Nobody saw him. They interviewed and stopped all of the people coming out of the wilderness. Nobody had seen him. And that was troubling. Deputies that day held a press conference and stated that Roy would be okay if he stayed on the known trails, didn't wander off. Trails were extremely well defined, and this time of the year would be fairly busy. If he got hurt, broke an ankle, broke a leg on the trail, he'd find assistance. Well, May 2nd through May 5th, Monterey County couldn't get anybody on mutual aid to respond to that location. And I can kind of understand this because it's so remote and so difficult to get there from most counties, except maybe Santa Barbara and Santa Cruz. It's a haul. Well, they didn't get any. So they dedicated 25 of their own deputies, which is a lot back then, to work the trails, interview campers, and ride the helicopter from the campsite, from the big Sur State Park, back into the countryside and start spreading out from the Sykes hot springs, trying to figure out where they were at. At about this time, rumors started to flow. I hate rumors. One rumor was that Roy wanted to leave his family and become a hippie and live in the community in the backcountry. Made no sense at all. None. That he had been attacked and killed. Of course, that could always be a possibility, but no evidence of that. He was just a brilliant guy and wanted to fall out of society. Well, that's possible. Then why would he have his dad forward his mail? There's no evidence of anything at this point. But since the time he had left, it had snowed considerably back in the backcountry, which for May, late April, May, kind of unusual for that time of the year. So the map of where they were searching. This is the Pacific Ocean. Here's Big Sur. Sheriff's office said he was between Jamesburg and Big Sur, in that Sykes area. That was their general consensus. Now, if you wanted to drive from Big Sur all the way around it would take you at least an hour and a half. It says an hour and 13. This is a long drive, but that's a long haul. Hiking, it could take you days because this is very thick wilderness back in here. Again, the California coast, absolutely stunning. May 5th, Search and Rescue decided they were going to terminate the search for Roy. They said that they had looked, they had contacted, they spoke to everyone that they could find in the backcountry, didn't find anything. And that was it. Pretty short search, but with few resources, I kind of get it. And without an exact path other than what he told the rangers, and that didn't seem to follow because they didn't find anything. They didn't know where else to look. Nothing happens, and you can just imagine that his parents are just wrecked. Well, May 14th, a hiker in the backcountry reported finding an odd collection of items between Big Sur and Jamestown. Exactly what I just showed you on the map. Hiker showed on a map where they found the items. And on May 15th, Monterey County deputies on horseback rode into that wilderness area, and they found these odd items that other campers said that they stumbled onto. Those odd items being, Mr. Silverstein wrote out all of the items that Roy would have with him, brand names, etc. So they get there, and they find Roy's flashlight. They find Roy's sleeping bag. They find Roy's food. And the most troubling of them all, but if you're a 411 follower, you understand this, they find his shoes. They don't find his backpack, which is really odd. So the deputies recover this, and they decide that they're going to spend a day there, searching the area from where these items are out, because they think Roy is in that area. Something I would have done for sure. So they spent that entire day hiking around. They find nothing. They spend part of the next day in that same area, going up to 1.5 miles, 2 miles, searching, find nothing. And they come in, they contact the Silversteins, explain what they found. Well, during this time, I know for a fact that when you go through grief, you need assistance. And assistance can come from many places. It can come from family members, the clergy, counselors. Well, the Silversteins were a very, very close group of family with the Unitarian Church of Palo Alto. And their pastor was a man named Danforth, Reverend Danforth. He'd been working with the family, and he saw the heck that they were going through. So Danforth heard about this finding and Roy still not being found, and he knew Roy well as a member of his church. So Danforth did a brilliant thing. He knew that he had many members of his church that were super healthy athletes. So he got 3 senior members of the local high school that were athletes and said, how about you come with me? And we're going to go into the backcountry where Roy disappeared. And during Memorial Day weekend, we're going to search. And these young men said, let's go. So Danforth took him in. I've never heard of this being done. But I admire the people that did this. On the last day of their search, May 31st, they're 1 mile from where Roy's supplies were found, and they knew exactly where they were because the sheriff gave them a map. Danforth's team found Roy. He was 50 yards, 150 feet off the trail in extremely thick, brushy country where nobody would go. He was dead. There was no description about what he was wearing or what he wasn't wearing. They left the body where it was, and they came back out and they told Monterey County Sheriff. It took them a day to get out. On June 2nd, Lieutenant Henry Gilpin of the Sheriff's Office took a helicopter into that location off of the Pine Ridge Trail, mentioned in the last several cases. Lieutenant Gilpin recovered the body and sent it for autopsy. In California, I'm not part of that anymore, but in California, they have a rule that coroners do not have to release the cause of death to the public or the press. I think it's completely wrong. I don't agree with it at all. A coroner is a public figure, publicly paid to write a public report that you can't see. I don't agree with it. Well, the best I could tell, they never released the cause of death of Roy. But deputies came out after they found the body, and they gave a theory about why Roy died. Theory was that Roy got lost and died in the wilderness. That's all they said. The complete bunch of absolute hooey-pooey. complete hooey-pooey. First of all, nobody leaves their shoes and starts walking through the wilderness. I don't care who you are. That does not happen. Other thing you don't do, you do not leave your food and your sleeping bag, especially since it had snowed there recently. And then the biggest question, where does his backpack go? It was never recovered. I don't believe any of it, but if you're a follower of my work, you know that many of the bodies I speak of are found without shoes. Now there was a memorial service at the Unitarian Church for Roy. Let's go backwards a bit. All three of the missing people you have now heard of from this area were college educated. All three had some association with the Pine Ridge Trail. They were either going out on it or they were using it coming back. All three stated they were either ending their trip or they all three started their trip at Big Sur State Park. His supplies were located just off a creek, between a creek and a trail. No cause of death was ever mentioned. Roy was the youngest of the three victims. There was no animal predation. And he probably took the same path out as Harold Drake. The months of the disappearances, Roy disappeared in April. It was on the borderline of May. The next one was July, and the next one was August. What can I say? That's a cluster, folks. And the more I look into it, the more disturbed I get. That's all I can tell you at this point. So that'd be the ending of the story of Roy Silverstein. But don't go anywhere, because I have something to tell you. Just recently, we had some exceptionally strong sun flares. You guys might have heard of them. And one of the best viewing spots in North America was Glacier National Park. So I'm not one normally to stay up to the middle of the night, but we decided that we're going to go out to the park that night. So we get there about 10:30 at night. It's the most people I've ever seen in the park, day or night. It was absolutely jam-packed. We had a tough time finding a parking place. But then we went out, and there's a small wharf that goes out into the water where you can launch your boat into Lake McDonald. You can look on a map where Lake McDonald is in Glacier National Park. But we went out there started about 10:30, and wasn't much going on. About 11:30, the fun really started. And from 11:30 till 2:30, it was the most remarkable show of nature's brilliance I had ever seen. Here's the oddity. When you weren't looking at your camera, your digital camera, you could see the hues, the reds, the blues, whatever. But it's when you look through the digital camera that you really saw what was happening out there. And it was out of this world. I probably took 200 pictures, and I'm going to show you 3. This first one I call the Flying Canine. And this was taken while I'm on the wharf dock, looking, the lake is behind me, and I'm looking up through the trees. I'll show you what I got. Now this is the actual view of what I saw. Now what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to turn it sideways. And to me, that right there, the front legs, the head, rear legs, tail, and wings. To me, it almost looks like a flying dog. I'm sorry. I've shown this to like 50 people. They can't believe it. So this is the actual picture. And here's the dog. So like I said, when I looked at this without my camera, it kind of looks like a reddish, whitish hues. And many times, that hue would stay there and you'd just be fixed. Now this one, this is a picture of a mountaintop. And what's cool about this is here's the lake right here. This is the mountains around Lake McDonald. This was so brilliant green. It was very bright. And then there was this pink coming out. And right in here, it was almost like, do you remember what the Michelin Man looked like? So in this picture, you can't see it quite so well, but there's the eyes, arms, and the body. Big, round, white. It's the only thing I could think of it looked like. But in this picture isn't that good, so I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time on it. But that was the Michelin Man. Now this last one is the one that everyone really loves. When I was turned around from the lake and I took the picture of the canine, I was kind of looking off to the right. Well, to the left, I almost dropped my camera when I'm looking through it. And I call this the Flying Angel. Now you may think I'm crazy, but I'm just going to show you what I had. Here's the same trees. And then if you look right here, so it looks like an angel to me with the arms extended. Get a little closer. And the brilliance coming off the wings. You may think I'm crazy, but that design out there, when I looked at it, that's what I thought of right away. So, here's what I can tell you. Going to see the aurora was something always on my bucket list. I feel blessed that I saw it. Memory I will never forget. And I would encourage you, if you ever can, to see it. Now that night that this happened, I had friends, Harvey Pratt in Oklahoma. They actually got to see colors on the horizon, which was brilliant. To see it that far south, some people even in Alabama said that they saw it. So, previous time, 20 years ago, that anyone saw anything like this that strong. If you get a chance, take a road trip. If you hear about it a couple days ahead of time, I put it on my Twitter a day ahead of time. Get in a car and go. You will never forget it. I was using just a standard iPhone, one of the latest ones, and it took perfect pictures. Thank you for being here. All the people last night were so kind and so nice around the lake. There were oohs and ahs of hundreds of people all at once. It's a magical moment. Maybe they knew it was the kindness revolution. I don't know. But I can tell you this much. that HUCK isn't too impressed with my presentations. She's flat out asleep. Ha 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 ha. You guys, you have a great week. Paulides out.